Hey folks, it's Matt once again. I wanted to do a review for another film I had seen recently. And I had not seen this film for a while. And it's a Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor film called Silver Streak. Now, a long time ago, I had reviewed a film called See No Evil, Hear No Evil, which is actually my favorite Richard Pryor film. It's my favorite film with both of those in it, Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. See No Evil, Hear No Evil, I've always enjoyed ever since I was a kid. But it's not the first film that they worked on together. They worked on this film, Silver Streak. Then they did Stir Crazy, which I liked. See No Evil, Hear No Evil was their third one. In my opinion, the best. Or my favorite. And then they did a film called Another You, which is their worst. That's when Richard Pryor was really bad into his affliction. And you could really tell it was really hard to watch, sad to watch, depressing to watch. I mean, the funniest thing about Another You is the opening titles. Not even the titles, the opening logo. Where you have the TriStar logo, and then Richard Pryor's commenting, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, boy, a fucking white horse." And you know you're in trouble when only the logo is what makes you laugh. So Silver Streak is definitely not as bad as Another You, but I can definitely say Silver Streak I prefer Stir Crazy and See No Evil, Hear No Evil over Silver Streak. But Silver Streak, I'll give respect to. It started. Now, it's directed by Arthur Hiller, who actually went on to do See No Evil, Hear No Evil. He also did a 70s film called The In-Laws. He made the older version of The Out-of-Towners with Jack Lemmon. The Lonely Guy with Steve Martin. A film called Teachers, which I've heard of. The Babe with John Goodman. Taking Care of Business with, I believe, uh, James Belushi. Film called Nightwing about killer bats, which I've never seen but I've heard of. Outrageous Fortune, which I've heard of. He actually did direct the Alan Smithy film Burn Hollywood Burn and then replaced his name with the moniker Alan Smithy. Carpool with Tom Arnold, so yeah. Later the last film he directed was a film called Putt, which I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. It's one of those crappy National Lampoon type of films. Like National Lampoon's Putt, starring John Bon Jovi. So it's sad that this is a guy that was making some of these fun comedies, and the last film he did was a John Bon Jovi comedy. I can't even make this shit up. Now, get into this film, Silver Streak. I can watch it. It's a time waster, but it's not my favorite of the Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor collaborations because it's about a 2-hour movie. Richard Pryor doesn't come in until an hour and 3 minutes into the movie. Because the first hour and 3 minutes, it's Gene Wilder gets on a train, wants to relax, and while on the train, he meets a couple people. He meets Ned Beatty, who's in Deliverance, and tons of other films, Ned Beatty. He's a vitamin salesman, that's what he says he is first. He's like a vitamin salesman. And then he meets this girl, and they kind of have a little fling with each other. And while they're having their fling, there's a guy who falls out of his window, looks like he's got a bullet in his head, and Gene Wilder freaks out, but the girl tells him, oh, it was nothing. The next day, he wants to make sure, and he comes across a few people, comes across, oh God, I forgot the guy's name. He was in the TV show My Favorite Martian, and he was in the movie The Stand, and I want to get his name. But this guy's looking around this professor's room that Gene Wilder thought was killed. Ray Walston, that's his name. And then Gene Wilder gets thrown off the train by Jaws himself. from James Bond, Richard Kiel. And each time he gets thrown off the train, he always says, "Son of a bitch." Fires a crop duster plane, someone flies him in, gets back on the train, tosses to Ned Beatty. Ned Beatty tells him, "Hey, I'm actually a Fed. There's something going on. Something to do with these letters and proof of something was a forgery, and they wanted the professor killed, or they have a guy pretending to be professor," and all this stuff that really wasn't that interesting. It was a mystery that wasn't that interesting. I mean, the villain is Patrick McGoohan. Now, Patrick McGoohan, he's been quite a few stuff. He's probably, see, he was in Braveheart, he was in Scanners. I want to get the title of the show right that most people remember him from. Yeah, The Prisoner. It was a TV show called The Prisoner, which he was probably his most famous role. It was one of those things that it wasn't really funny, it wasn't really interesting. I liked Gene Wilder, so I could watch it for Gene Wilder, but I can't remember any laughs in the first hour, other than each time he gets thrown off the train, which is more than once, he says, "Son of a bitch." Okay, cool. Ned Beatty, Richard Kiel, Ray Walston, Patrick McGoohan, some recognizable actors. But really, that's all that happens in the first hour and 3 minutes. Ned Beatty gets shot, and one thing leads to another. Gene Wilder has to escape again. And really, that's what it is, the gist of it. It's not until another time he's off the train that he gets to this sheriff's office, and then sheriff gets a phone call. Gene Wilder's pretty much framed for murder, so he can be chased by cops, and cops won't believe him. And when he steals a cop car, that's an hour and 3 minutes in, Richard Pryor pops up. And that's when the movie comes alive. And you can really tell that these two had a good chemistry with each other. Now, maybe I remember hearing that they didn't like each other in real life, or, had problems with each other in real life, which seems to be a lot of comedy teams that happens to. I mean, even Abbott and Costello later on didn't get along with each other. Cheech and Chong had a falling out for a while. That just happens a lot. But they did have great chemistry with each other. And this is probably the film that really got Richard Pryor into the movies. But at the same time, when I think of a movie that got a person really up there in film land, Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours is much more of an impression. And even Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective is more of an impression. It's not fair, of course, because they're the stars of the movies, while this, of course, Richard Pryor doesn't come in until like an hour into the film, and then he's with Gene Wilder for the next 20, 30 minutes. And that stuff is the best part of the movie. Richard Pryor I'm trying to remember the line correctly, I don't want to fuck it up. The sheriff talking on the CB, and Richard Pryor getting on after they've run through a roadblock, and he goes, "You want to know what happened? We just whooped your ass! We whooped your ass!" Or when he asked Gene Wilder what he's done. "Oh, I've been accused of murder. Oh, just drop me off over here. I don't deal with the big M." And you just tell right off the bat, they have great chemistry with each other. Get through the cost, through some roadblocks. And weirdly enough, there's one scene of music that really, I always remembered ever since I first saw this. It's when they're driving, and it's this long shot on this long, lonesome highway. Car is very much in the distance, like over here, as coming past the camera, and it's this low, soft whistle. And I don't know what it is about it, just the way it looks, the way the time of day they caught it in. how everything seems silent except this low whistle and the soundtrack. I don't know what it is. Something about that shot I always liked. And then a minute later they ruin it because the rest of the score. Because the rest of the score I didn't care for, but that one piece of score, that just that simple whistle. I had to mention that because sometimes it's the weird things that you remember about a movie. Previously Drive, they get to a station, I think a train station, and you have the best scene in the movie where he's got to try to get Gene Wilder to pass for black. For example, when he gets the stuff on him, and oh, don't worry about the cops. I'm just worried that hope we don't run into any Muslims. Always putting the stuff on, and Gene Wilder says we can't do this. And Richard Pryor jokes, "What? You're afraid it won't come off?" Or when Gene Wilder's trying to pretend, Richard Pryor's like, "Why you white boys always have a tight ass?" Or when they pass by the cops and Richard Pryor's asking, the guy says, "It's a white guy." "Well, if I see any, I'll let you know." And then runs off. I mean, I'm doing a shitty job. Richard Pryor pulled it off much better. But it's a scene where pretty much he gets Gene Wilder into a bathroom. He's putting this shoe polish on his face and putting a hat on him and a radio next to his ear. And of course, Gene Wilder doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, that's the best part of the movie. Kind of like in Stir Crazy, when Richard Pryor goes, "Yeah, at bad, so you don't get fucked." But Stir Crazy, the ending I think could have been better because the ending, it's like they took a needle and then zapped out the laughs because nothing about the ending, there was like no laughs and no even attempted humor in the ending of Stir Crazy, but the rest of it I like. Here though, you have this fun 20-30 minutes, one thing leads to another. Uh, They get back on the train, helping out. Then they get shot at. They gotta go off the train again. Then they talk to some feds and go, "Hey, we put that frame up so that we could get to you." And we know you didn't kill Ned Beatty. And then you get the idea that this is when Richard Pryor's character was going to be out of the movie, because he says goodbye. He has a cigar. And tells about this car that they left back in another town. And for what I understand, I could be wrong, that's really when the character was going to end. Not die, but be out of the movie. That he was going to be in it for this 20-30 minutes with Gene Wilder. And then it really does show as if he's going to be gone. And for what I understand, again, I could be wrong, they saw that there was a great chemistry between these two, and that Richard Pryor really was a breath of fresh air. That they're like, "Hey, you know what? We gotta wait a minute now. Let's not have him leave. Let's have him stick till the end of the movie. I mean, let's have him be a bigger part of the film." And I'm trying to look on the trivia to see if I'm full of shit or not. I know now, a great review, right? I'm just being silent. Yeah, I could be wrong, but that's what maybe it was meant to be. But I swear I've heard that before. I swear I've heard that before, that that was going to be the case. Again, I absolutely could be wrong, but that's what it's not saying the trivia, so maybe I am full of shit. But I swear I heard that somewhere before. Okay, maybe I'm full of shit, but I swear I've heard that before, because that's what it does feel like. That they end the film. I guess maybe that's is doing its job. That if you watch it the first time, you think he's gone, because when Gene Wilder is getting to the train, then Richard Pryor appears. And really, after that, Richard Pryor really has nothing to do and nothing to say. And maybe that's, I didn't hear that, but that's what it feels. That he was only going to be in for this 23 minutes, and in the last 20 minutes, Richard Pryor just joins Gene Wilder. They both get on the train. They get shot at. Richard Pryor hides under a little table. He goes, "Is everything okay?" And then a little bit of the table lands on his head. One or two bad guys get shot by the good guys in a helicopter. The train is a runaway train. They gotta stop the train, or they gotta slow it down. They gotta do something. Gene Wilder leans over to get some shit, to do some shit to help at least slow down the train or unbuckle the car so that they don't die from a collision. And Richard Pryor's holding Gene Wilder. I mean, it's the feds in the helicopter that kill the bad guy, and again, Richard Pryor doesn't do anything except holding Gene Wilder for a little bit while Gene Wilder leans out of the train. That's really all Richard Pryor does in the last 20 minutes. They have this big scene where the train crashes through the station. Richard Pryor steals a car and waves goodbye. And then Gene Wilder kisses the girl and the movie's over. And that's the thing that... Sorry, I know I should have looked at it before, but I was looking at the trivia to see if there's anything to my bullshit, but I guess, as far as I know, nothing so far, but it really does seem like that Richard Pryor was only going to be a small part of the film, and they're like, hey, this guy's doing really well. Let's film more of him. Let's have him be in the last 15-20 minutes. Let's not have him disappear with 20 minutes left into the film. Because I do find it strange that this is the third built guy. It's Gene Wilder, the girls, and Richard Pryor, and again, he doesn't show up till over an hour into the movie. Not many movies that do that, except... No, I can't think of many now that I think about it. And I think that's what hurts the film for me. I mean, the first hour is pretty much a fast forward, but in a way, there's really nothing you're missing. It's get to an hour and 3 minutes or so and watch Richard Pryor and have fun with Gene Wilder. Richard Pryor trying to teach Gene Wilder how to be black and how to walk black and so on and so forth. And that's really it. I mean, the action scene at the end where the train crashes through the station, cool, well done practical effect that they would not do nowadays. It'd just be CGI. I appreciate that. But it's one of those films that, other than the 20-30 minute, and I say 20-30 minutes because that's really what Richard Pryor has something to do and something to say and some dialogue. That's what it also felt like in the last 23 minutes. Well, this is last minute. We don't really have anything for you to say, Richard. We don't really have anything funny for you to say, Richard Pryor. So just be there and just hang around with Gene Wilder. You get shot at, hide under a table. Gene Wilder has to do this. Because there's another guy with Statman Crothers who got knocked out. Statman Crothers, of course, was in The Shining, gets an axe to the chest by Jack Nicholson. And you feel like he could have just done the same thing that Richard Pryor's doing, which is just hold Gene Wilder while he unbuckles a car, and that's pretty much all Richard Pryor does. So have Richard Pryor in it earlier in the film. Like, have him be a passenger. Another passenger in the film on the train. And then shit goes down and he ultimately has to help Gene Wilder. Have him actually do more in the third act or have some dialogue for the guy in the third act of the film. It almost seems like he was written into the last 20 minutes, last minute. So, there's parts that I like about Silver Street, but at the end of the day, I feel that Stir Crazy and definitely See No Evil, Hear No Evil are much better Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor films. It's not a rant. I can watch it for the little bits I talked about, but there's a bit too many problems for the film for me. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I know this is sort of a rambling, stumbling review. Can't what can I say? It's early and didn't sleep well, and it's fucking storming like crazy. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, and we will see you later. Bye bye.